Hi everyone, thanks for coming out and supporting the open day today, even though I know the weather's not been what we were hoping for. I'd like to start by asking you to raise your hand if you've ever heard that fruit and vegetables are healthy for you. Now keep your hand up if you actually manage to eat 5 or more fruit and veg every day. Okay, so we all know that fruit and vegetables are healthy for us. But do you know what fruit and vegetable plants actually need in order to be able to produce the wonderful health benefits we're always being told about? My name is Claire Munns, and I'm passionate about helping people reconnect to the natural resources within and around them that promote health. I do this by using the knowledge I've gained from studying both environmental science and nutritional therapy. In this talk today, I want to give you a brief insight into how the health benefits of fruit and vegetables can vary depending on where you get them from or how they're grown. My hope is that for those of you who are already eating your 5 a day, it will help you get the most out of them. And for those who aren't, maybe it will give you a bit of encouragement as to how you can enjoy them more. So I'm going to start off by talking a bit about nutrients, then discuss a bit about chemicals, and finish talking about variety. So the first nutrient I'm going to talk about is vitamins. These are beneficial compounds that are produced by plants for plants. And then when we digest them in our stomachs, we manage to extract those compounds. And this is really important because they're essential for the functioning of our bodies, but we can't make them ourselves. Now, by the nature of what we need to use vitamins for, they're a very unstable compound, and they have to be constantly regenerated by plants while they're growing. So once a plant is harvested, that regeneration process stops, and you start to get a rapid loss of vitamins from the produce. So if we take vitamin C for an example, you can lose 15 to 77% of the vitamin C content of food after only 1 week from being harvested. And in softer leafy produce, that can be even quicker, so you can lose up to 90% after only 24 hours. Now unfortunately for us, we now live in a world where there's big supermarket chains, and they have a big logistical operation. So it takes time for the produce to get from where it's grown to us, the consumer. So with the best will in the world, it takes them at least a week to get sort of salads and vegetables from where they're harvested to us. So we're starting to significantly lose the vitamin content. If you think about it, if you go to a local producer, like a farmer's market or somewhere like Communigrow, the produce will only have been picked either on the day or the day before. So once you start to accumulate those choices over time, you're going to start to get a big difference in the amount of vitamins you're going to get from that type of produce compared to supermarkets. And we want to get as much vitamin C as we possibly can because it's a really powerful antioxidant that supports our immune system. And I can see it's all women in the audience. It gives us a bright glowing skin that we all spend so much money on face creams trying to achieve. Now, we also have a problem where we have year-round produce now in supermarkets, so there's no real seasonal variety. So there has to be some special tricks used in order to give us the year-round produce, because it's not sort of happens naturally. So I'm going to take apples and potatoes as an example, because these are produce that can be stored for a long period of time. So in order to give us a year-round supply, rather than having an abundance in one time of the year compared to the other, they'll put them into long-term storage, and they'll put a chemical onto them to either put them to sleep for apples, so it stops the ripening process, or for potatoes they use a herbicide where it stops them from sprouting. And then they put them into atmosphere-controlled conditions where they take away the oxygen and they reduce the temperature. Now, this is effective in stopping the potatoes and the apples from going too soft so they can still be sold. And it does preserve some of the vitamin content. But similar to when you put food in the freezer, it is still slowly degrading over time. And so it's estimated that apples and potatoes in supermarkets can be between 6 months and a year old. And one of the other problems that you have is it does affect the taste. Because you've delayed and disrupted the natural ripening process, which breaks down starches and makes it more of a pleasant texture and a sweeter taste. by just taking them out of storage, it doesn't replicate that process. So that's why sometimes it just doesn't taste as nice. So the second nutrient type to talk about is minerals. And unlike vitamins, plants can't make these for themselves. So they have to get them from the soil in which they're grown. Now when you look at soil, it may seem like there's not a lot going on. But under the surface, there's a dynamic living ecosystem formed of worms, insects and microorganisms. And they're constantly working to break down minerals from the earth and organic matter so that plants can actually utilise the minerals that are there. And whilst they're doing this, they're also creating air pockets and pockets for water so that everything is flowing through the system in a positive way. But we've now introduced really big modern farms that have large machinery, pesticides and synthetic fertilisers, and these are having a big disruptive influence on that natural ecosystem, because just by the weight of the machinery it's putting a heavy burden onto the soil, and it's taking away some of those air pockets and water pockets which create more of an anaerobic environment compared to an aerobic environment, and that disrupts the microorganisms, and it also makes it harder for roots to spread as far and access as many nutrients. Then you also have the pesticides and the synthetic fertilisers, and again they're harmful to the worms and the insects and the microorganisms. So you're losing the regenerative power that naturally exists within the soil. So you're getting more loss than you are regeneration, and over time that is causing us to lose available minerals from the soil. So vegetables that were grown in the 1970s had higher mineral contents than we get now. So just a couple of examples of symptoms you could get if you're lacking in some minerals. One of the big ones is actually muscle cramps, and that can be related to magnesium. And that's found in good concentrations in leafy vegetables. And the other one is perhaps a familiar feeling to us, that sometimes when we skip a meal you can get that hangry feeling of irritation and you really just need to eat. And what that can be related to, it's a little bit more complex, but chromium is a big one that's implicated in this, and that's found in broccoli. And the other tip is to make sure you're getting enough protein with your meals if you start to feel that way. So the third type is something called phytonutrients. Now, not so many people have heard of this one, but it's my personal favourite because it's where the magic of plants really comes into its own.
What was it called?
Phytonutrients. And so what these really are, it's a collection of a really wide range of chemicals that plants can sort of use as a toolkit to help them to adapt to any stresses and strains of the environment. So if they're predated on by an insect, or they're partially eaten by a herbivore, or the temperature is varying, or there's more rain than they're expecting, they can boost up the concentrations of these chemicals in order to heal and to be more resilient to them. So you get quite a big variation between plants of the same species of these types of nutrients, because they don't need to have them, but they can produce them as they need them. But certain groups of plants are better at accumulating these than others, and one of those types is herbs, which is why they're so prized for their medicinal value to us. And the other is weeds, which is why they're so hard to get rid of. So some examples of specific compounds. One is allicin, which you find in garlic, and it's very antioxidant and anti-inflammatory. You also get quercetin from apples, which is really beneficial if you suffer from hay fever. And then you get resveratrol, which we all know is in red wine, but really we should be eating grapes. So as you can sort of maybe imagine, when you disrupt the way that plants interact with the environment, such as through using pesticides because you've completely taken away all the insects, or you grow them in very controlled conditions where the temperature always remains the same and they don't really have any challenge, they're not going to spend the energy creating these phytonutrients. So you're going to get a lot lower concentrations. And what that means to us is it affects the taste of the food. It's not going to taste as vibrant, and it's not going to have such complex flavours. And the way that I sort of think about it is, if you've ever eaten tropical fruit from Spain or from a warm country, they taste completely different to the ones you get in our supermarkets, and it's that sort of level of difference that you're going to get between the taste. So if you've never tried local produce that's been grown without these types of disruptions, I challenge you to try some today, because you might very well enjoy eating fruit and vegetables more once you can really taste them. And the other thing is to add some herbs. Just add a little bit of herbs to your meals, because it's just going to give that really burst of vibrant taste. So that's the end of the nutrient section, so that's the good part. So now I'm going to flip the coin over and we're going to have some look at chemicals, which are all things that we know we don't really want in our food. So there's many different types of chemicals that are used in agriculture, but for the purpose of today I'm just going to talk about the big one, which is pesticides. So the main class of pesticides we use today is called organophosphates, and the way that this works is it overstimulates the nervous systems of insects, so they end up where they get paralysed and then they die. And the way that it targets a specific enzyme, which is actually common across all animal species. So it doesn't just impact the harmful insects, it's not specific just to them. And actually, the way that pesticides were discovered was through chemical weapons development during World War II, this specific type. And that's why there has to be such tight regulations on how they're used, because really all it depends on is the dose that you apply as to what effect you're going to get. So overall we get two key problems with pesticides. One is it doesn't just kill harmful insects, it kills beneficial insects as well. And that can affect our bees, which we really need to pollinate our plants. And the second is that even though it's not going to have an overt harmful effect on us, we still have to process the residues of the chemicals. And to do that we have to use up some of our liver enzymes, and they're powered by the vitamins, minerals and phytonutrients that we so want from our food, so you get it's like a cost to the benefit that you're getting. And the last topic is about variety, and we all know that variety is the spice of life, but it's so easy for us to get into a rut with our eating, where we end up eating the same breakfast and maybe the same lunch and only a few dinners. But the big problem with this is we can then miss out on key nutrients, because not all types of vegetables have the same nutrients in them. And that's why you may have heard the saying, eat the rainbow. So colours are a big way of us telling which type of nutrients we're going to get from different foods. So for example, lutein, which is a type of carotenoid, it helps to protect our eyes from UV damage. That's found in yellow and orange types of plants. Whereas anthocyanins, which help to protect the fats in our membranes, they're found in blue and purple plants. The other way that you can tell differences is through taste. So the bitter taste in leafy vegetables and in broccoli and cabbage and things like that comes from something called glucosinolates, which are very protective against cancer. So apart from just our choices of getting into a bit of a rut with food, we also have experienced in modern agriculture a drive towards getting high yields and foods that can store well and transport well. And what that's led to is a selective breeding process that's reduced the local variation in food. So we're getting a very uniform, everything is the same because we want the maximum yield. And that's led to a 75% reduction in diversity within the same type of plant, so say potatoes. So in the Andes, where potatoes originate, there's 4,000 different varieties of potato, but we can only commercially grow 80 types in this country. Now, one of the unintended side effects of creating higher yields is that the plants can grow bigger and faster, but they can't concentrate the nutrients in the same way. So they may have the same amount of nutrients that they always had, but you're getting less concentration within what you're getting because it's having to grow more and faster. It's also more taxing on our environment because it needs more fertilisers and more water in order to be able to grow. And the long-term problem with it is it makes plants less resilient because we need the variation to be able to adapt to different types of climate conditions, different types of diseases and different types of predators. So we need to be careful that we're not setting our plants up that they can't actually cope with the environment anymore. So to sum up, really, to get the most of out of your fruit and vegetables, you want to be choosing small-scale producers who are growing locally, seasonally and without chemicals. and then to try to get as many different types of fruit and vegetables into your diet as you possibly can. You'll enjoy it more because you'll have more types of tastes, more textures to enjoy, and your body and the environment will thank you as well. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, let me know.